And then about 2 weeks later, I was out walking and a butterfly landed on my hand and I started speaking light language to this butterfly. And I was waiting for the men in white coats to come take me away.
Welcome to the Spirits Beside Us podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lippincott. I'm an ex-Wall Street analyst turned international medium, spiritual teacher, and best-selling author. Each week we'll dive into the fascinating and uplifting arena of the non-physical world to help you deepen your understanding and spiritual connection to the unseen realm. We'll also share a behind-the-scenes look with others who've done the same and speak with experts in the field about their experiences. Pull up a seat and let's dive into these perspective-changing conversations. Welcome again to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. My friends, I'm so glad that you're here. And today we've got a wonderful guest. Her name is Laurie Parente, and she is a spiritual healer, a medium, an intuitive guide, transformational coach. And she's really dedicated to empowering people on their journey of self-discovery, healing. And she's got a long track record. She's got over a decade of experience in the field. And she brings a unique blend of intuitive insights and spiritual wisdom to her work. She does spiritual wisdom. She brings compassionate support to everything that she does. And Laurie's holistic approach really kind of encompasses the mind, the body, the spirit, and it helps deep healing and ultimately the transformation, perhaps out of pain into, the release of pain and or, the growth of the spirit. So with that, Laurie, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're so welcome. I'm so grateful to be here.
Well, this will be wonderful. I can't wait to, dive into, what you do, because it sounds like you've got a broad expanse, not just from mediumship and communicating with spirit, but also the angelic realm and light language, which I'm starting to hear more frequently, which is very interesting. This is becoming a more frequent experience, which I hadn't really been hearing a couple of years ago. Now it's becoming more of sort of perhaps an important thing. In fact, let's start with light language while we're talking about that. What is light language? How did you encounter light language? And why is it now becoming more a field? Why are we hearing more about light language now?
Well, light language is a channeled language. It comes from my higher self, my angelic self, and I believe it's something that we can all be activated in. And it's a language that bypasses the thinking mind and goes straight into the heart. So it is full of sound and color and geometric patterns, and it really gets to the root of what you're working with, what you're trying to heal. And I saw someone do a seminar in light language in 2016 and thought, this is really cool. This guy's really cool. I really like this. And then about 2 weeks later, I was out walking and a butterfly landed on my hand and I started speaking light language to this butterfly. And I was waiting for the men in white coats to come take me away. Even though I'd experienced this incredible healing, I was like, that's not for me. And so when it started coming through, it was, another layer of the, whoa, this is really crazy woo-woo stuff. And then I would be in sessions and it would just bubble up in my throat. I couldn't stop it. And it's like it comes from my heart, like this chimney right up through my throat, and it just comes out. And it's so interesting because when I'm working with a group, everyone will get what they need from the light language, and they will have completely different stories to tell after the light language activations and the healings. And I would say, in my experience, 20 to 30% of people will get activated in light language after hearing it, if they are ready for it. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's when you hear the light language that resonates with you, it just opens something in your heart and it just starts to flow. And people do channel it differently. I have a friend who channels it through painting and through symbols. And looking at what she does, it's very similar to like the ancient hieroglyphics, what she does with light language. And I have another friend who dances with it. and you can sing, you can speak it. It comes out in many different ways, but it's like the language of your higher self. And so I think a lot of people are being activated in it because our heads are so busy that we need something that will just immediately drop us into our hearts. And I know that if I'm, going down a road somewhere in my head, I will just speak it and I just drop right in.
Wow. That's so interesting. Yeah. And to your point about it really resonating with you, I had heard it, I think a few years ago when I was at a singing bowl, healing sound bath. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I don't understand any of it, but this is very interesting. Here I am, a medium, thinking I should know all these things. Yet the first time I heard it, I was like, what is that? And they said, oh, it's light language. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how you understand that, but that's great. But then just very recently, somebody was giving an example of light language, and all of a sudden my entire body just like, I could just feel that the energy like flowing right through me, and like it was like somebody like plugged in an energy blanket and wrapped around me. I was like, wow, that really, I could feel that, and it was so powerful. And perhaps, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Right. And it is just pure energetic language, and it's amazing to me. It's still amazing to me that the healings that happen when you're ready for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you really got to be, I guess you really have to be open to it and accept it and allow it. Much the way many of the other modalities are in the same way, whether it's spirit or angelic communication. You've got to allow and be open to it. Otherwise, your mind will just shut it down.
Right. Or sometimes it will come to us quite spontaneously, and then we kind of backtrack a little bit and catch up for a while. That's what happened to me with light language. I was like, okay, I don't think I'm going there, but then it just was coming out, right? And it's definitely channeled, and it's very different if you listen to different channelers, Wendy Kennedy with the Pleiadians, or listen to different. It's really cool to listen to different ones and find out what feels right in your heart.
Yeah. In fact, the one I was just recently hearing or experiencing, however you want to phrase it, sounded very much like almost sounded Hawaiian, like a native Hawaiian language. It had that same sound, same syllables, if you will. And I was like, wow, that almost sounds like I'm in the Polynesian, region somewhere.
And it would be interesting if somebody else was listening to it and say, I really heard a lot of Italian in there. Like I will have people in a group say, I heard my language in there. I heard Chinese in there. I heard Spanish. And even though I'm speaking the same language, their higher self is filtering it, and they're hearing what they hear, and trying not to get into our mental minds about it, right? Just trying to allow it to do its work.
Yeah, and just let it be. So this all started when a butterfly landed in your hand, and you're like all of a sudden talking light language to this butterfly. Like, okay, the white men, the men in the white coats are coming by.
Right. Well, and it wasn't even like. It was speaking back, like I had this conversation. And so it was very, we talked to spirits, we talked to those who have crossed, we're talking to angels, but all of a sudden I'm speaking in a channeled language to a butterfly.
Wow.
Right. And then afterwards I'm like, okay, well, obviously it was an angel, right? Because I'm speaking angelic light language and I'm understanding it. So, but it did take me a while. Some things when we're open, they come, and other things just kind of come on us, and then we have to figure them out, right?
Wow, that's so
keeps it fun, keeps us on our toes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you now regularly use light language as sort of a modality that you bring to clients, or how do you know when to bring the light language, or when it's needed, or how do you know to use it?
Well, it's absolutely like we all have tools in our toolbox that we use to help people to heal, to bring more of their light or their magic into their life. And I will just know when it's coming. I will just know it will show up, and I will always tell people before, if they haven't worked with me, some light language might come through, and this is what it is. Usually I find we are deep in a meditative journey at that point, and it's just, they are totally in it anyways, so it's not like their heads can get too confused by it.
Okay, yeah. So that makes sense. So there's already the meditative process, relaxation, allowing at that point, and then you're already starting to feel it, and then you're like, now let's work with it because it's here. Are you able to give an example of your light language, or is that more, you'd prefer to do that more like on a meditative process?
You know what? I can certainly tap into it. Is there something that you find many of your listeners like a common struggle?
Yeah, I think common struggle is overcoming the stress and anxiety and pain of the daily life, and how can they heal to get beyond that and to start finding their higher selves, so they can find that inner peace and guidance.
So the overthinking and the worry and the spending all the time in the past and worrying about the future and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
Let's tap into that. Just take a deep breath and kind of roll those shoulders back and allow yourself to relax into the moment. And I think we're just going to tap into like those feelings of lack and limiting beliefs and unworthiness and all those things that kind of keep us a little bit stuck, that stem from patterns in our past. So if you just imagine a ball of color, any color you like, coming into your heart, it's kind of like a vortex, and this is where the light language will come in and it's almost like going to be a waterfall of light, just allowing some of this unworthiness and lack and the self-abasement is kind of coming through, just so that we can flush that out and bring in some more self-love. Dusa shata kana satea shonomo satataro non kana satekia shatakonea. Haroto kosukushana kata kiana tatukushakana tatakiana kata kokata. Damasena shuna na pola na kana satayana kata koreana sakatea. Somo seshana kata sokoriana satakia shukutukiana kasatkakiana koreana kata kiaka. Dasene eoriana sateki shukutkia. Dus setoko satakesho toko satata patanana koreana katakia. Hanna setakeshikone, hanna seke kukoreana katakia. Hatatea hoso kesukushia. Just because we've done some releasing, then just imagine that waterfall of white light just coming down on your head and flushing all the way down through your body, filling you up with light and love and clarity and expansion. And just let it flow all the way down. And when your heart knows, you can go ahead and just come back to this moment.
That was amazing. It almost sounded, this time it almost sounded like a little bit of Japanese-ish. So there was a little bit that Polynesian, but this time it sounded almost more Japanese, and similar sounds as I had heard last time. But it's that same. I can't put my finger on it, but there's definitely something that sounds either Polynesian or Asian or Japanese in that sensation. But I had that same experience where the vibrations are going right through me and right around me, and I could just, it was great.
So we're just releasing those old patterns, everything that's ready to go, and it's just that quick healing. We don't need to get into it mentally, right?
Right, exactly. were there any meanings behind the sounds or words that were coming through that might add, texture for people?
So everything that was coming through, that word self-abasement really came through at the beginning. And I'm going to be completely honest, it is, I don't know exactly what that means, but I think it means kind of beating yourself up, right? Yeah. And so that was really coming through. And when all those moments in our life when we look back and, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, if I'd have done this, the if-thens, right? Those were coming through very strongly. So it was kind of like a washing through of those. It's like it happened because it happened, and it couldn't have happened any differently because it didn't. So let's let go of that and just allow ourselves to be present and know that we had that experience for a reason, and now we're here. And from a soul level, when we're looking at the human life as an experience, we cannot fail, right? It's just experience. So it was really coming through that it was about letting that self-abasement go. And that's the first time I've ever used that word, so very interesting.
Well, there you go. And clearly that's coming through for a reason.
Right?
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, that makes so much sense in that what you're saying about to be in the present moment. Every experience is happening for a specific reason, and for us to blame ourselves for having something in the past when in fact that experience is a learning tool.
Right. And by working on those coulda, woulda, shouldas, or the if-thens, we're sending that energy back into the past. And we want to be as present as possible so that we can find that peace and that clarity without our energy being dispersed. Because, as you said, people are trying to find that peace and that calm. And if our energy is always going backwards or forwards, then we're not in the moment. And that in the moment is where we find that clarity and that peace and that calm. It's staying centered and in our hearts is where the magic lies.
Right, and that's so true. It's that's where we find also our power, our personal power, our ability to control everything is only in the now. It's like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. That's what it's all about. We can't do anything about the past. Can't do anything about the future, unless, of course, we have a time machine. The only thing we have is the now.
Right.
That's all we can do. Yeah, that's great. So it clearly it was very much of a washing out, removing the pieces that you don't need and that you couldn't control anyway, but you're learning from it.
Right. You can't change it, so it's a good idea even at the end of every day to just let go, to just wash it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or perhaps, if you in the morning you're getting up and you're taking a shower, envisioning that shower just, cleansing everything that was built up in the past and just letting it go down the drain.
Right. I like to do it morning and night because I find at night is when we really travel. When our physical bodies are sleeping, our spirits are off doing their own thing. And if we go to sleep energetically clean, then we have a bigger, not bigger, but more. I find I personally have more of an ability to remember my nighttime travels.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, so get two for the price of one, 2 in a day. That's wonderful. How did you discover your intuitive gifts, your mediumship gifts, your connection to spirit? Was this something that you always had when you started out as a child, or did you have a certain experience or spiritual awakening at one point that kind of reopened the portal for you? How'd that all begin?
I think it's a common story, that those of us who are connected, as all children are, but remember being connected. Something happens around the age of 4 or 5 when we begin formal schooling, or our parents say, okay, that's enough of make believe. You need to grow up. Or in my case, I was 4 years old and I told everybody what was in all the Christmas presents in my big family, and that didn't go over so well. And I was accused of unwrapping all the presents and putting them back together, and and also telling the neighbor that there was a big angel on the lawn and that meant somebody was going to die. That didn't go over well either, right? No. So kind of stuffing down those abilities throughout my childhood and my early 20s. And then my mom died when I was 27. And she started immediately really coming to me in spirit. Spirit still came to me. Angels still came to me. I just didn't talk about it because it was crazy. It was weird. You'd be kicked out of the tribe for being a weirdo, right?
Sure.
So my mom started really coming to me, and I started to really, really trust her, but I still didn't trust myself. And it wasn't actually until I have 4 children, until they were grown, and I was like, okay, what's happening now? That Spirit really started to say, now this is your time. And I happened to be on Facebook, and a thing for James Von Prague mediumship course came up, and took it, and it just blew me wide open again, and then it was just the dual way that we learn, the way of going within and working with your spirit team, and then also taking every course imaginable to learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So and allowing yourself to grow spiritually, and releasing that ego mind that wants to hold on to reality for dear life and say, well, this has got to be it. The materiality, that's what I know, and I'm going to hold on to it, and releasing that so that you can expand and fill yourself with a new reality.
Yeah, and in my work, I found that my inner life actually became so much more rich than my outer life. Turning up those inner senses just became this place I was so excited, and still am, and curious to go to and journey with my spiritual team and learn. And I think, as much as I love my life and I love my people, there's a big part of me that knows that my inner life is more real.
Interesting. And you also do energy work, energy healing as well. And did that become a bigger part of your life as your mediumship and spiritual work began? How did that open up?
It was, I studied quantum healing, and it just kind of every course I took added to my toolbox. And then I found I would be in readings, and somebody's grandfather would be coming through, but now they weren't just coming through to give messages. They were saying, hey, you really need to get that kidney checked. And then bringing in the angels and bringing in light language, and can we do something with this kidney? Obviously, you still want to go to the doctor, but let's talk about this kidney, and let's talk about the energy that's in this kidney that's causing this blockage.
Interesting. So you're becoming more able to discover different maladies or issues with certain parts of the body that you'd be able to highlight and say, there's something that needs, attention here.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. And you mentioned as a child seeing the big angel on the lawn. Was that were the angels staying with you the entire time? And again, you didn't want to really tell the tribe, but have they become an even bigger part of your work? Just bigger part of the team that you're working with now?
Always. I mean, I think our teams in spirit is malleable. We're tapping into who we need to work with in the moment, depending on what our challenges are, what we're trying to express. But definitely, yeah, I can go into meditation and see just rings and rings of angels around me, and I know they're always with me.
That's great.
I have a very, very active brain, so I try not to get too caught on the names of the angels. Like, I will know when Archangel Michael or Archangel Raphael, but some people will be able to. I really love people who can say, oh, this is Archangel Haniel, or this is, but if I get too into the names, I find I get too much in my head.
Yeah. Oh, I know I always get in my head, which is my downfall for everything. I'm like always analyzing, that was what I used to do. So I'm like, that's what I do. That's what I immediately jump to. Like, okay, what is this? I have to question. I'm always questioning. That's my big issue. Questioning
is a good thing, right? And questioning, I love to question, okay, I know what my head says. When I question, well, what does my heart say? And you'll get 2 different answers. And the heart one will feel very different.
Yes, so true. That is so true. That's a great way of describing it, because they do come from, very different approaches. For example, when I'll connect to what I'm feeling are angels, my head is saying that's not right. You must be connecting at best with just maybe your guides. So my head's saying you're not, you're only going to be connecting with this, but your heart's saying you're probably way over here.
Right? And it's about learning to trust that heart. Our heart always goes into any room or any situation first. And if we trust it and follow it, it really changes how our perception, changes our lens, how we look at things.
Right. Right. And that goes to that saying that, all mediums have always been taught, trust and surrender, which is the crux of allowing ourselves to really open ourselves to spirit and have them work with us, since we're essentially their instruments that they work through.
Right. And teaching everyone that it's possible for anyone to do this.
100%.
Right. When you visit with a medium and they're able to bring through messages, then going from there and going, okay, if they can do it, what I know I can do it. We can all do it. We were taught we have 5 senses, but we have way more than that. And I love it when people connect on their own, when they have that moment where they're like, I connected with my dad and it was wonderful. Because you know as I do, I can connect, but you're going to get a totally different feeling when you connect with your dad.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that when we allow ourselves to open up, we all begin to realize that we are able to connect, because it's no longer that story of, oh, you have to be born a medium, you have to be special. And that was my big hang up in the early days, was I'd always thought, oh, well, I'm not in fact, I remember when I was first connecting and I was getting these experiences, I was thinking, well, wait a second, there are only 2 kinds of people who can either hear voices and see people that aren't really there. They're either gurus up in the Hindu Kush, or they're crazy. Well, I'm not in the Hindu Kush. Oh no.
Just like my experience with light language. They're coming to take me away, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I was fearing for my life.
I get it. But everyone can do this, and it's not hard. It's just different.
Yeah, and I think you touched on an interesting point. In the beginning, it comes so naturally, and then when we try to fit it into the box of, okay, well, it's got to have these kind of formats and this kind of structure, that's when our mind gets involved, and that's when we make it hard ourselves.
Right. And there's so many different ways to connect. There's a very prominent way that mediums work, where they will say, don't feed the medium, just give me a yes and no or maybe. And it doesn't work for me. It's a conversation for me. And I've got these 3 images coming through, and I could put them together for you, but if you put them together, it's going to mean so much more. So it's a very, very different way of being that evidential medium versus like more of a conversational medium.
And I understand both too. I mean, I understand the concept of the evidential medium under the concept of, we don't want to be seen as getting information that's not true, because there have been people in the past who are not genuine. So you want to make sure that this is real, and that you are truly giving something that is genuine to the recipient. But to your point, it's also, will the recipient get something that much more beneficial to them if they can contribute their own, meet people halfway and say, I get it, and I'm going to put my own color into this picture and make it that much richer.
Right. Yeah, there's such a history of, mediums being charlatans and fake. And I mean, you can post something on Facebook about mediumship and you will get 8 comments about people saying that they're fake, and they'll put the YouTube video to prove themselves underneath it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about being so grounded in who we are and what our purpose is that we just don't even hook into that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just making sure that if you know that you're doing it for the benefit of spirit and the benefit of the recipient, then you just know that you're giving. You're trying to ultimately heal in whatever way spirit knows best.
And you'll get the knock if you're not. If you're getting in your head, they'll let you know.
Oh yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
You're like, oh wait, I'm off a kilter here a little bit. Let me recenter and let's try this again.
Yeah, exactly. They'll knock you off the block and say, "Start again, kid." And that's where we go up and down these hills and valleys. Well, you'll be going up and up and up and up, and then they change the training with you, and you got to go all the way back down and go back to the next mountain.
It's always evolving, right? And that makes it fun.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it fun. I'd call it interesting and challenging. Because a number of times I have to slide back down into that valley. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this again. I'm losing it. You feel like you're losing your connection. You're like, oh, and then you start getting frustrated, and then you start getting in your head, or at least it's easy to do that. You're like, oh, what's going on? And then all of a sudden something happens, and you're like, oh, wow, that was amazing.
Every time you feel yourself kind of sliding down, as you say, then you have an experience that moves you to the next level.
Oh,
right.
Gosh,
it's that breakdown before the breakthrough, always.
Yeah.
And you see it coming, and you're like, okay, here comes the breakdown. So I'm excited for the breakthrough.
You hope but that's the funny thing. You hope there's going to be a breakthrough on the other side. You're like, oh, please, where is it? And then if it's been like a dry spell before that, you're like, oh no, I'm done.
It's always there. Just something comes along, and I think that when we're in that breakdown, it's actually an integration. We're needing to slow down a little bit so that we can integrate, so that we're ready for the next level.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's so true. It's like we have to kind of go back on ourselves, and it's almost like we have to relearn, reprocess, get everything back in, and get back into center, get back into that place where we need to be again, get back to that where we once started from. It's that energy, that love, that if you're there, that's where spirit will finally meet you.
Yeah, I think you're right. We go back to basics, right? We feel that kind of shift, and we go back to, okay, these are my 5 basics. Let's go back to here and just start again, because I know I'm going somewhere cool next.
Yeah.
And more gifts are coming through, and I find it very exciting.
Yeah. And the more you try, and this is true of any kind of mediumship, the more you try and allow your mind to get in, the farther away from that center of purity and awesomeness that you began with, and awe, the farther away from that you get, because you're trying to force this puzzle that isn't malleable. It has its own living, breathing existence.
And so much beyond our comprehension. And that's where the light language comes in for me. I'll just speak it out loud, and it'll just drop me right in. So it's finding those tools that allow you to drop right in quickly.
And I understand why it makes so much sense that it's connected with meditation, because by that point, if you're in a meditation, everybody, as well as you, the person giving the meditation, has just dropped down to a level so calm, so relaxed already, that you've just opened yourself up to whatever comes through.
Right. I do have friends, though, that will phone me and say, I'm spiraling out. Can you just give me 2 sentences? Absolutely.
Okay, you asked for it.
Might not be what you're wanting, but it'll give you what you need.
There you go. Isn't that always the case? It's like the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Right? That was my go-to song, singing to my kids when things didn't work out the way they thought. And it's funny because it's so true about spirit. You'll have people who'll come and say, I want to connect to this person about this. And you'll be like, well, that's great, but actually Grandma's here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's often what I tell my clients is, this is the way it works. I know you're here for, a person that you really, really want to connect with, and I'm sure they want to connect with you, but spirit has a different agenda sometimes, and they want to, communicate something very directly to you. So
Right. Right.
that's
All about
interesting.
trust.
Oh, all about trust. That's wonderful. So, what would you say perhaps might be your most memorable experience or time, whether it's been, with mediumship or with angelic communication, or, for example, with the butterfly and the light language.
So many. I think my favorite mediumship ones are always when we're working with somebody who just really is. I don't like to use the word skeptic, but they're not sure what's happening, and maybe someone else has booked the session for them because they think it would really help them. And they come on not knowing what's happening. And this was a time I was dealing with a woman who was getting married the next day.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what are you doing with me? Like, I'm sure you got stuff to do,
Yeah.
And she was just pulled off on the side of the road, and it's a busy time. And some messages came through, and then all of a sudden, her grandfather came in, and I know she was trying to connect with her grandfather because she was upset he wasn't at her wedding. And I said, okay, I've got this stuff, and he's giving me a message, but he wants you to put it together. So I'm seeing white roses, a dragonfly, but it looks like it's in a spiral, some old-fashioned handwriting, and he's telling me he's going to be with the flowers. And she just, melted. And I said, tell me what this is about. And she said her sign between her and her grandfather was a dragonfly. And her maid of honor the night before at the rehearsal party had given her a silver dragonfly in a spiral to go around her bouquet, the stems on her bouquet, and had it engraved with her grandfather's handwriting from the last card that he ever wrote to her. So when he was saying to me, tell her I'll be with the flowers, he really was with the flowers. And this is an instance where I could have said, tell me more. I want to tap in. I want to tell her exactly. But by giving her those images and she put it together, it meant so much more to her.
Oh, that's the example of having the recipient put everything and bring the color to themselves. That's amazing. That's really interesting.
Right. And then as for healings, I think my favorite ones that just really, I sit and I go, that's why I do what I do, are people who've been dealing with health things where no one can tell them what's going on. They've been to all the doctors, they've been to all the stuff, and we do perhaps a soul retrieval or some light language or whatever it is that we're guided to do. And then I hear from them 2 days later and they say, you know what, I had headaches my whole life. I took an Advil every morning. Nobody could tell me what was going on. And I just realized they're gone. Wow. Because that energy was released, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is energy, and everything is, if there's things that are constricted, it's because of something that we have yet to release.
Right.
Whether it be from this life or a past life, or we're holding it generationally.
Interesting. Yeah, that's so true. It's like, and that kind of reminds me of one time I was doing a healing on a client, and neither of us had any expectations. He didn't even tell me what was wrong. He just said, I've been to every doctor. Nobody's had a clue what's going on or how to do it. And I'm basically at my, wit's end. So I'm willing to try anything. Like, okay, let's see what happens. And, I just remember, bringing through, the healing energy. It was, my spirit guides are the ones who were just, sending the energy through me. And I remember after opening my eyes at the end of the session, he just looked really skeptical and still was like, this is a waste of time. He emails me a couple days later in language that he would never have normally written, because he was such a a grump, to put it in plain terms. And he described what had happened was that next morning he woke up having the best sleep of his life. But what really blew me away was he said when he went in to the shower, he apparently had these bandages on all the tips of his fingers, on every single finger, because the skin was falling off. It was all black, and there was something wrong with the tips of his fingers. When he went into the shower, some of the bandages started falling off. The skin started falling off. Underneath the skin was fresh pink skin. And he said that within a week, all of his fingers had grown back. Like the tip, the skin, everything had grown back. And he was, I was like, oh my gosh, I guess there's something to this.
Right? Those ones that blow our minds too, right?
Yes.
We think, holy
cow. I was like, oh, wow. And I kind of had to, go out to my guides and say, okay, thank you for proving it to me.
Right? And then you go, more, please.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're like, okay, I got to pinch myself. This is, I got to have more of that.
Right?
Yes.
And then you figure out, you start to share those stories with people who you think would be absolutely skeptical, and it blows their minds too.
Yeah, exactly. But then you begin to think, okay, well, what if the next healing session is not as dramatic, or is not as potent, or is not doesn't do what everybody, because it almost raises the expectations that you're going to have this magical healing session. And sometimes there's a little bit of healing, sometimes there's a lot of healing, and I get the sense that sometimes it's also, again, we were talking about being open, and sometimes it feels like it's almost like the recipient also has to be a little bit receptive as well. Do you get that sense?
Well, I think there's also, who are we to judge the healing that happens, right? Yeah. So maybe, this guy, there was a very physical healing that you were able to bring through. What about if the healing's on a real mental level, or an unconscious level, or a subconscious level, or an energetic level that we can't really see, we can't really measure like that. Yeah. So, I think absolutely, some people are more open, but this gentleman you were dealing with doesn't sound like he was very open, but his soul was like, come on, we're ready for this. Yeah. So maybe it's I don't know if you've had this happen, but you'll get out of a session and you'll be like, oh, what was that? It kind of felt like a dud. And those are the people that come back to you and tell you all the great things that happened, right? So it's sometimes not judging it, because we don't know. I mean, what if we did something and we healed seven generations back and we just don't know it?
Interesting. Yeah. Or to your point, maybe there's something subliminal that we can't see, hear, touch in our own 3D world, but there's something going on beneath the surface that Spirit's actually working with.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow. We judge ourselves, we second guess ourselves, and sometimes we just need to be kinder and trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, what kind of advice do you think, we were kind of talking about this earlier, would you give to somebody who's trying to either open up their intuitive abilities, or their connection abilities, or their desire to begin to connect with spirit, angels, whatever, or they're just going down that road and exploring it? What would you say to them?
I would say, find a teacher. There's so many people on YouTube that have free resources, and find somebody that you kind of resonate with and that you like, and just start opening up to that, and couple that with going within. Find a way to quiet your mind, which is one of the hardest things. We are not monks in caves. We're in a world where information's coming at us so quickly. And so, try breath work, or try tapping, or try some guided meditations. Find out what it takes for you to let go of that mental mind, and then just start tapping into your intuition. And I think the hardest thing is to trust, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But then again, it goes back to that, what we were just talking about before, the trust and surrender. Like, if you're able to trust, great. but it's a tall order, because your monkey mind's always in the background chattering away, going, I don't know about that.
What's always, we have that intuitive hit or that sense, and then our second thought will always try to talk us out of it.
Yes, exactly.
So it's recognizing, oh, that's my mental mind that's trying to talk me out of it. What was the first thought? And if I trust it and I follow it and I act on it, wow, well, now I'm starting to get some confirmation that this is actually really cool.
Yeah, and that it's like our teachers used to tell us back in grade school. Whenever you put down your answer in the beginning, don't change it, because you'll change it incorrectly. You had it correct, and then something comes along and changes it. Same idea.
Right. I always teach people to put that big giant stop sign. I live in Canada on the prairies, and we have these huge stop signs where for the big rigs, like they're massive, like 4 feet across. And wow. I say, put that, after you've had that first thought, put that stop sign in your head and don't allow that second thought to talk you out of it.
Interesting. Yeah. It said stop, then you got to stop.
Stop.
Wow. All right. And that's the amazing thing is when you get that, the intuition or that voice in your mind is so subtle, so quiet, that our loud, obnoxious, conscious mind just talks right over it, and we either don't hear it or we just ignore it because it's so subtle. It's lost in the noise.
Right. I mean, that's probably my biggest question. How do I know it's my intuition and it's not just my mind? And I say, how does it feel?
Yeah, the feeling.
How does it feel?
Going back to the heart.
Yeah. Because your mind doesn't feel anything, right? But if you get the hit, oh my gosh, leave the house now and how does that feel? Well, that actually makes me feel really calm, so I'm going to follow it.
Yeah. Or the number of times that I'll leave the house and you get that sensation of, I think I should bring an umbrella. Nah, I don't need the umbrella. And you go out and you get absolutely drenched.
Right? And it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this work. This summer, when you're getting off an airplane and there's just that crush to get off and you're just like, oh, you left something. I'm fine. I got everything. Got onto, off the plane, took the train, got onto the ferry, and it was really loud, and reached for my AirPods and went, uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Right? So even as long as I've been listening to it, it depends what's going on externally. You can still get caught and then had fun getting them back from the airline, but I did. So it's about when you don't follow it, not beating yourself up, right? Oh, I know what was happening. Everybody was crushing to get off the plane, and so I didn't listen. It's okay. I'll get them back.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the important thing is learning, again, the word trust, learning to trust that intuition, learn to understand that feeling when it comes, and then saying, okay, I'm going to follow it. I think that's kind of the big thing is I think somebody did an experiment with themselves, challenging their own intuition. And they started saying, every time I get that little tiny feeling that just drops into my awareness and then vanishes, I'm going to pay attention to it, and I'm actually going to follow it, and I'm going to do this for a month, and I'm going to see what happens. And they did this for a month, and it turned out almost every single thing that dropped into their awareness that they followed was accurate. And like, wow, this changed my life in sometimes rather remarkable ways.
Right? We get that evidence that, and even if you have the notes app on your phone and just write it down every time, and after a week, take a look at it and go, wow, we are so conditioned to take all our cues externally. Mm-hmm. When we start focusing in and taking them internally, it's a real game changer.
Yeah, that's a great example. Just that, and fantastic ideas. Like every time you get that hit, just write it down. Whether it's on a notes app or somewhere, just you don't even have to act on it. Because I think that's the other thing is that sometimes we're afraid to act on it because we're always thinking, "What if?"
That's that second thought,
Yes,
right?
exactly. So if you want to challenge it, write it down on the notes app, and then say, okay, did it happen?
Right.
And sure enough, you'll find out that everything that you wrote down happened for a reason.
Right.
That way, you don't have to worry. You're like, okay, well, I don't have to worry now, but this is proving it true. So now I know I got to follow it.
And sometimes you will not follow it, and it's okay,
Still, even now,
right? Even now,
absolutely.
you'll forget your AirPods on a plane.
Yes, exactly. And that's when you have to be kind to yourself.
Exactly.
Wow. So what was it that inspired you? I mean, we began to talk about that. What was it that began to inspire you to connect with your angels? I mean, you talked about that giant, angel on the lawn, but what was it that made you feel, okay, I really got to start, reaching out and communicating and had they, come to you to the point where, you're now kind of like the intuition, incorporating their guidance into not only your life and trying to give it to other people as well?
So when I first started connecting into my spiritual team, after I took that course with James Van Prague, I connected with my mom and my nana, and then other beings, I guess, in my team would start to come in, and I kind of pictured myself at like a boardroom table because that was my experience. But I was the CEO and I had all these files, and okay, well, I'm working on my health. Who wants to help me with my health? And different guides, different teachers, different mentors would come forward. And then I just got to the point where I'd be like, okay, who wants to teach me today? And I would always be surprised. And they would take me on these journeys. Sometimes they were epic. Sometimes they were little. Sometimes they didn't go anywhere. And I just started to tap into all the different members of my team. And so I learned like who they are and how they help me. And if I need help that they can't give, then they will bring in someone else. And it just, after a while, I noticed the proportion of angels was the biggest, right? They were
Wow.
the biggest part of my team. And they kept saying, you carry an angelic frequency. Once I started speaking light language, they said it's an angelic light language. And then really tapping into that, knowing that if I'm here and I have this angelic wisdom, it needs to be shared.
Interesting. So is anybody able to gather their board members in their boardroom and start saying, okay, well, I've got all these files, who wants to do this? Everybody else is able to create their own boardroom?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we all have an entire team in spirit, right? So we need to suspend the disbelief and allow our imagination, which is our way into our intuition, to work for us, and just go with it. Find out, I find for myself, I'm a musician and I'm a lifelong teacher, but if I just put on a little bit of music, I can drop right in. And other people say music takes them out. So it's doing experiments to see what works for you. Do you go to a sound bath, and when you're at a sound bath, like you're just totally connected? Well, then find a recording of a sound bath and go within and see where you go. I teach the concept of soul sanctuary. Like, find a place that you want to go to. Where, if you were going to meet with your team, where would it be? Would it be on a beach? Would it be a cottage in the woods? Would it be on a cliff? Would it be in a forest? And use your imagination to create an entire scene. Bring in all your senses, and then invite your team in and just see what happens. Be curious, be open, and remember that it's supposed to be fun. The angels will say all the time, you guys take things too seriously.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they so much like they say everything's so seriously, and we do, because we're all so this has to be the way things are done, and we have to your point, suspend our disbelief. We've got to become 5-year-olds again, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and allow that creative mind to get into the hyper mode where we're allowing the creativity to create, to become And that's where the connection happens. It happens in the right hemisphere, not the left hemisphere.
No, we're all creative beings and we're creating our experiences, co-creating our experiences. And we're pretty stuck in those left brains, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that's what we've been taught.
Right, exactly. That's how we've grown up. That's what we've learned. That's what we've become accustomed to, and that's become our reality, our experience. And if we just begin to shift away from that and become more uh, right brain, creative, imaginative, imagine, what's the word I'm looking for? Imaginative, I guess. Focus on the imagination and allowing that to happen, then that's where the magic happens. I think where people get caught up is when they hear the word imagination, they're like, oh, I'm just imagining all this. And that's where the logical mind jumps in.
And is it enough if you are? Because how does it feel? So when I lead people and they're saying, well, I say, just, it's enough to imagine it and go with how you feel.
Yeah. And then you just keep on connecting that way. Even if you feel it's your imagination, if it feels good, go with that feeling. And pretty soon you're going to start feeling that it's not just your imagination anymore. You're feeling that there's something more to it because it's happening so often.
Right. You're going to find yourself at that cabin in the woods or wherever you're going, and things are going to happen that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's real for you.
Mm-hmm. And your heart is just screaming, "This is real. This has to be real. I feel it." As opposed
And
to
you
your
get
head
that
saying,
welcome home. It's
yeah,
always that feeling.
exactly. Yeah, I can clearly think of so many times where um, my mind was in the state of incredible relaxation in a meditation, and I was going into that ideation creation mode and allowing the imagination to go wherever it wanted, and I could feel the wonderful connections to at times where I felt like, yeah, I was connecting to a woman that had to be the most beautiful angel in existence at the time. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And I felt it. And next day I was like, yeah, right, sure. An angel? Who are you kidding? Like,
Right?
boy, what are you wishing for?
So it wasn't only your second thought, it was your 88th thought by then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, I was just kind of, well, it was probably my 88 repeated thought.
Right? And so it's I always say, close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, bring that angel back into view, and tell yourself that you're making it up, because your heart will say,
Yeah, well, that was what was so wild because, and again, this happened very early on in my journey, and I remember experiencing that, and it blew me away so much that I had to write down, I had to grab a pen and a pad and start drawing out everything that I saw on with this woman, and it just, and I took that piece of paper with me to the office and stared at it, just, and I was like, I can't believe it. And the back and forth between my head and my heart, my head was having a real tough time, but it was getting drowned out by the reality that my heart felt and what I drew. It was like, there's more than what I'm thinking, because I wasn't thinking that.
and we always know that it's that connection with spirit because it stays with us.
Yeah.
We'll have a connection when we're 5 years old and we can explain it absolutely perfectly when we're 60. It stays with us. And, what else can we explain from the time when we were 5 years old that it's just gone? So how does it feel? And did it stick with you? Right. And that's those intuitive hits, right? Is it sticking with you? Are you really getting, it's not going anywhere? It's into your intuition.
And that's the exact same thing as perhaps you might have a dream visitation, which is so different than just a regular dream. In a regular dream, assuming you can even remember it, you don't understand it, it's too foggy, it doesn't really go anywhere. Whereas a dream visitation is so crystal clear, so perfect, so you can understand everything. All your five senses are being experienced in the dream, and you can remember that dream specifically in all of its detail for years on end, just like what you were describing.
And yet you will pick up your phone the next day and message your favorite medium and go, I think my dad came to me last night. Do you think this could be real? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
real.
Yeah, and your left brain's going, what do you think? What do you got to seek help.
Right. And I always say, well, and you can tell from our conversation, I say, you think your dad came to you, or you know your dad came to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's the funny thing is like when that happens, and when a person has such an impactful, powerful experience of a dream visitation, they ask the question, could it be real? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Of
real.
course. It's that powerful. So yeah. So at this point, what is it that motivates you to keep doing what you do and bringing through all your connections and your healing, to everyone? I mean, I think I just answered your question, but
You did. It's once you have worked through all of your stuff and healed we'll be healing our whole lives, let's put it that way. But once you get to a point where you're really deeply rooted in who you are and what you do, you start to get that hit. I've got to help other people. I know I can help other people. I just did a live mediumship show, I guess, stage show just last week. And I thought, this is it. More of this, bringing through messages of support and love and joy and comfort changes people's lives. It changes how they look at their lives, and it definitely changes their grief. Once they have that knowing. I mean, what is the most common question we get? Are they okay? Yeah. Are they mad at me? Are they proud of me? Or do they see me? Did I do the right thing when they passed away? And it gives people comfort to know that relationship goes on. Right. And then we can even take it deeper and know that not only does the relationship go on, but it gets better.
Yeah. And stronger, because that bond is there, and they're now able to do so much more with you and for you.
Right. And I think once we do the work on our end and kind of clean up those human relationships, do all that forgiveness stuff, then we meet more on a soul-to-soul level.
Mm-hmm. So true. What would be your if you could say or give one piece of advice or one thing to a listener, what do you think you'd say that you feel could help them as they're either exploring or healing, or what would be your one piece of advice?
I would say we're all capable of connecting with our loved ones and our spiritual team. It's just a matter of believing in it and trusting and being flexible and experimenting.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's absolutely it. And also believing that, those intuitive hits, write them down.
Yeah, write them down. Get your evidence. We're evidence-based, right? Once you have that evidence that, wow, this really works for me, then you're apt to follow it more.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you do that, the more it happens, the more you're like, okay, I can no longer be a doubting Thomas. I must follow this.
And then you become just a really calm person, and your worries lift, and you sleep at night, and that whole anxiety, depression thing, just dissipates.
Right. Because all of a sudden you realize you're so much greater, existence is so much greater, there's so much greater energy and love that there is no reason to stress, worry, and stay up.
Right. It's all just experience, and don't take yourself so seriously.
So say the angels, yes. And spirit. Exactly. Well, great. On that note, thank you so much, for coming on this show. It was wonderful having you. And, Laurie, how can people get in contact with you?
I keep things pretty simple. My website's laurieparente.com, and I'm on Instagram mostly as Laurie Parente.
Okay, well, great. Well, wonderful. Laurie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And for all those people who are listening to the episode, thank you so much for listening in. And, come on in every Wednesday and make sure to like and subscribe. And that way you'll make sure that you'll get all the episodes as they drop every Wednesday. So with that, this is Chris signing off, sending you love and light, and I will talk to you next time. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spirits Beside Us. Make sure you head over to the show notes for all the links and information on this week's episode. You can check it out at spiritsbesideus.com. If you love this episode as much as I did, head over to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're looking for a community of spiritual seekers like yourself, make sure you join my Facebook page, Spirits Beside Us Podcast on Facebook. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light. I can't wait to connect with you again on Wednesday.